You should get a cloth napkin and embroider it.
Sorry.
Property of Jerry Valdez.
I knew it.
We're going to call to order this evening's meeting of the City Council. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Brinkman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez,
Present.
Councilmember Cole,
Present.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Here.
Councilmember Elrod,
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
Councilmember Schlock.
Here.
Okay. This evening, we have Troop 263 from St. Mary's. They're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, Council, any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, it's approved as is. This evening, we have a couple of guest speakers. We are honored to have here this evening. Our first is Nancy Dragoni. And Nancy, give a brief introduction for Nancy. She serves as the Deputy Regional Administrator for FEMA Region 8. She oversees the operational aspects of regional disaster response, recovery, mitigation, and preparedness activities in the FEMA Region 8, which includes Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming, along with 28 federally recognized tribal nations. Previously, she served as the Acting Deputy Director Administrator for the FEMA Directorate's daily operations and led efforts to enable states to take a more active role in managing disaster recovery efforts. She has also served as the Acting Regional Administrator for the FEMA Region 8 Executive Director for the Ohio Emergency Management Agency, Director of Operations, Director of Administration and Public Information, Chief for the Ohio EMA. She retired from the Ohio National Guard with 22 years of combined U.S. Army, Army National Guard, and Air National Guard service, and has served on FEMA's National Advisory Council and the Memorial Institute for the Prevention of Terrorism Advisory Board. She's also held the position of President of the National Emergency Management Association and was the 2014 recipient of that association's Lacey E. Suter Distinguished Service Award. It is our pleasure this evening and our honor to welcome Mr. Dragini to our council meeting this evening. Would you come on down to the...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here. Clearly, I come from state government, started in local government, and I'm really honored to be able to join you this evening to present the mayor and present the council with a plaque that recognizes your achievements in the community rating system. This is the system that allows for a community to be recognized for their flood prevention efforts, and it reduces the cost of flood insurance. I know that you here are no stranger to floods, and if you've lived through one, or you've even smelled one after the water goes down, you know just how devastating those are. So I'm pleased to be here and recognize this opportunity and this accomplishment on the behalf of the City of Littleton. City of Littleton has received a Class 5 rating in the community rating system. This is not something that most communities achieve, quite frankly. There are only 8, including the City of Littleton, in the entire state of Colorado, and only 10 in the entire region that we represent. So 6 states, 10 communities that have achieved level 5, only 8 in Colorado. It's really an accomplishment that not only is something for this community to be proud of, but directly impacts your citizens as they can receive a 25% decrease in the amount of their policy for high, I'm going to make sure I say this right, for policies that are considered high risk. And those are the policies that are most expensive for our community members. So that's really an accomplishment and a credit that reflects not just your interest in your engagement in ensuring that your citizens are protected with good flood practice measures, but also their cost of insurance is decreased as well. I know Carolyn Roan was instrumental in making this happen, and I appreciate her efforts on behalf of the city. And so now, ma'am, it's my pleasure to present you with this plaque recognizing the accomplishment of the City of Littleton. I know. She's going to want another one.
Say FEMA.
Your favorite.
FEMA.
Thank you very much, and thank you for making the effort to come down here and present it to us. We really appreciate that. And it is very important to us because it does not only improve, as you said, the cost of insurance for the communities, but also the quality of life. And it ensures that when we do get some of these weather conditions that we are in a much better shape than certainly we were before. I also want to thank our partners with a lot of this was Urban Drainage and Flood Control District. And without their assistance and their financial contributions and their engineering assistance, a lot of this wouldn't have happened, which is probably why you see Colorado getting so up there in the 8 out of 10. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. Okay, our next guest speaker is Kevin Milan. He's with South Metro Fire Rescue. And Kevin will be coming occasionally to council, probably on a quarterly at least, and then as needed if incidents declare, to kind of give us an update and a report and be here to answer any questions council may have regarding South Metro. As We have been unified with South Metro since January 1st, and so good opportunity to give us a quarterly report on how things are going.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of council. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be selected by Chief Baker to be the liaison for the city of Littleton. So I've included in the pamphlet that I've given you my business card. So please do not hesitate to reach out at any time if you have questions or need any updates beyond our periodic updates. I was going to very briefly just follow the cover page of that and just hit some of the highlights, and then we can end up with some questions. So again, I wanted to introduce myself. Chief Baker will be attending as requested and also periodically as well. As far as the facts and figures, if you open your pamphlet, it talks about the number of calls that we have had. Last year, we typically tally on a quarterly basis. And again, I don't want to go into a great deal of detail, but the majority of our calls are EMS in nature. Certainly fire, where I saw the mayor this morning on a structure fire is part of our business as well. As far as our apparatus and number of districts, we have 5 battalions. We have about 683 members, about 500 of that online. So on a 3-shift system, you have, approaching 200 people on duty a day. So as evidenced by our response to the fire this morning, we have a good service to the citizens. As far as governance, as the mayor mentioned, we've been unified since the first of the year. So right now we're operating under a fire authority model. So what will happen is in the year ahead, we will be redistricting the entire fire district, and we will move from the current 12-person director model, of which Mayor Brinkman serves as City of Littleton representative on the Fire Authority Board, to a 7-district model. So in May or June of this year, we will be redistricting and then have an election in about a year's time. So that's an opportunity for folks to serve if they would like to in that manner. As far as operations update, things are going very well as far as the unification of the departments, assessment of South Metro stations as a whole. We have 29 stations and another scheduled to come out of the ground probably early 2020. We had hoped for 2019 on that. We have 2 new apparatus fire engines that have been ordered this year, and doing an assessment of the Littleton and Cunningham fleets and working to standardize our operations there. As far as the fire marshal's office and an update there, the fire marshal workload has increased dramatically with the Cunningham and Littleton unification. So the number of inspectable occupancies has, in round numbers doubled. So we've had to increase our staffing substantially in that area. All staff is in place, and there's a phased plan to get into those occupancies and get those inspections done. Fire marshal's office classifies the occupancies as high risk, medium risk, or moderate risk, and low risk. So if you can use the analogy of a nightclub or an assembly area, a school, a nursing home, or a hospital, those are those high risk systems, or those additionally the buildings that have fire protection systems in there that need, that maintenance and inspection. So the fire marshal's office will be in those every year, and Littleton has done a great job of that. The moderate and low, the moderates will be inspected every 2 years, and the low every 3 years. So it may take several years to get all of that done. Fire Marshal Anthony Valdez has, committed to a process of education, to help bring things into compliance and phase those things in should any deficiencies be discovered. The next item on there is just as far as community outreach. This year, Citizens Academy is full, but it's certainly something we encourage citizens to attend. It's a chance for citizens to operate in the burn building, operate the Jaws of Life, to see what we do for inspection, see public education, see those sorts of things. So that's certainly available on our website. Also, we do have an Explorer program, which is an extension of the Boy Scouts, and we have a very active, so I'll be recruiting some Boy Scouts here in just a few moments. So again, available on our website. The back page, just wanted to briefly talk about the Cody Mooney Memorial Littleton firefighter, South Metro firefighter, who passed from a brain tumor. The event went very well, and I would like to give kudos to the Littleton Police Commander, Cody. He was very instrumental in both planning the situation and also led the motorcade from station to the Mission Hills Church. So a very well-attended event. Some very good news is the baby, Emily's baby was born. So Cody Sedona Moody is with us now, so that's a big deal. And with that, I would entertain any questions and again, offer my service to council and the mayor and the citizens.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
No, but we might like him to know that several of us several years ago participated in fire ops training, where we got to wear the gear and do all kinds of things. We would never have survived in putting anything out, but we learned how tough it is to do it.
It helps with that. We do that with our dispatchers. They spend a day in bunker gear and
We
doing
went
the
up that
tasks.
long ladder and
Yep, increases awareness.
went down
It's a great thing.
the pole, the whole kit and caboodle.
Nice. Well, thank you for doing that.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none? Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much,
it, and
ma'am.
we'll look forward to seeing you again.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to public comment. Public comment, if you wish to address the council, please have signed in on the speaker form. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at this meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. And we may refer the matter to staff to obtain additional information and report back to council and the community as appropriate. First on the list is Frank Atwood.
Oh, demanding, Frank. I said so. Let me just, what do I do? Thank you, Wendy.
Just let go of it and he'll start it.
Oh, super.
Tyler? He's coming down.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, City Council, and I'd especially like to thank Public Works for plowing residential streets on Wednesday, Thursday. I'm Frank Atwood from District 4. I'd like to invite you to 2 events, a potluck party at my home and a calendar design meeting at the library. First, the social. I invite everyone to come to a potluck dinner at my house. The phone number that you see can Give me a call and I'll give you details. It'll be Friday evening, March 29th from 6 to 8:30. Please call me for details. Also, I've distributed potluck invitations to City Council, clerk, manager, and you can get details from them or the city attorney. Now, priority of business. This is primarily directed at the television Channel 8 audience that I need your help. The transition from quaintness and small-town feel of Littleton needs to be documented. I feel it is accelerated, and I feel putting it in a calendar format might make more citizens aware. This is an example of what 2 months of the calendar might look like. Here is the historic Littleton Incorporated logo. The courthouse in all its glory is centered in the picture. Here is the historic and here is what we have now. The continued charm of Littleton can be seen in the light rail Main Street clock tower and the courthouse cupola. The clock tower and courthouse cupola jump at you and assure you that Littleton's leadership might not be preserving downtown's character and charm. So, what I look forward to is a meeting tomorrow evening. All are invited. Tomorrow evening, Wednesday, March 20th, at the library basement from 6:30 to 7:30. I hope you'll all join me. Look forward to discussing potential calendars. If you have any questions, call me back at 720-260-1493. And again, this event is tomorrow evening, Wednesday, March 20th, library basement at 6:30 to 7:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Next is Jeannie Erickson.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. I attended the joint LIFT Urban Renewal City Council breakfast meeting last Friday, March 15th. This meeting is not videoed, so it is not available for the public to look at. I've also attended 99% of all of the LIFT Urban Renewal meetings since it has been rejuvenated in 2014 in person, and those I could not attend, I watched on TV or watched the video. This current LIFT board has been very involved in getting the application process up to date so that if and when a project comes forward, they are prepared to take an application. They have also decided that a board member should not be taking notes for their board meeting so that they can all participate equally, and will be getting someone from the city clerk's office per the city to take their notes. They have been working on getting their website correct and up to date. Per request of the LIFT chair, LIFT has also addressed the agenda protocol and how, per the chair, it needs to be set up the same as City Council has theirs set up. I am uncertain where he's getting that information, but that is not true. The board is also taking on the task of hiring an attorney to assist them when the city attorney feels it will be a conflict of interest for him to assist. This attorney would be on a very limited basis. I think that this board is doing a great job of trying to get things cleaned up on the paperwork side, and that they are definitely correct in having their own attorney if needed. As stated at the Friday meeting, they would only need this if the attorney, this other attorney, if there was a conflict of interest with the city attorney. LIFT has been busy. I feel the board members, commissioners of LIFT were treated very poorly at the Friday morning joint meeting. It was as if they were being reprimanded. For what? I don't know. They only meet once a month, and these are volunteers from our city who are decent enough human beings to volunteer their valuable time to try to help the citizens of Littleton. Since there are no applications for assistance from LIFT, for the only urban renewal area left, they have been getting prepared for anyone that may request an application. The City Council does not have the right to tell LIFT what should be on their agenda. The City Council does not have the right to tell LIFT they cannot have their own attorney. The LIFT Board follows the urban renewal laws written by the state of Colorado, not the wants and wishes of the City Council. I would like to personally thank all of the LIFT commissioners for their service, and I hope that no one decides to resign from that board because of the way they were treated last Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Newfinke.
Good evening. My name is Linda Knufiki, and I live in the 4th District. At the council breakfast meeting with the LIFT board last Friday, council treated the LIFT poorly. By far the biggest issue is there was a misunderstanding of the existence of a draft contract to provide legal services. You did not know LIFT has a draft contract to engage with a reputable and experienced law firm that has industry contracts to be able to do urban renewal activities like float bonds. Council made a blatant attempt to undermine LIFT's ability to get their job done, and the board members all have busy jobs. My gosh, they're only volunteers. What you did was butt into the business without knowing or understanding the responsibilities of the LIFT board. No one deserves to be treated like that. Don't bully them and manipulate them, especially since they're only doing what you, the council, specifically directed them to do, which is to implement the Columbine Square February 2015 Urban Renewal Plan. If you want to do something different than what is in the Urban Renewal Plan, have the LIFT board start with what I call the urban renewal process. Since the Columbine Square plan was approved, laws have changed and you can no longer add projects to the plan on a whim. You just can't say we want streetscapes on Bellevue. You can't do specific property improvements. It's not as easy as that. The law tells us that any new project would be a modification of the existing plan. The law says any changes to the plan or in addition to the project will require a modification of the plan. The urban renewal process is also very extensive and starts with the condition survey and moves to negotiating tax increment agreements with taxing entities, developing financial plans, mediation, holding public hearings, approvals, and much, much, much more. But who's going to do all the work? The board can't possibly do this amount of work unless they have an executive director and attorney specific to LIFT. And LIFT's relationship to the comprehensive plan is also misunderstood. The existing plan, as the law requires you to do, in which you approved, describes how the Columbine Square Urban Renewal Plan conforms to the comprehensive plan of the city at the time the plan was written and approved by you, the council, not the Bellevue Corridor Plan or any future plans. Again, the responsibility of LIFT's board is to follow the plan you approved, nothing different. So finally, after seeing your misunderstandings, misplaced interactions with LIFT, and knowing Columbine Square developers said that they will not use urban renewal funds, I strongly recommend you dissolve LIFT and have LIFT pay back its obligations. Shut it down. The laws have changed. Find a way to do the projects you want to do without the restriction of the urban renewal laws. But no matter what you do, professionals are needed to navigate the process to eliminate blight. You cannot go at it alone. Thank you and have a good evening.
Pam Chadbourne.
Sorry, Council, my printer's on the blank, so this is handwritten. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live in District 1, a block and a half from here. My comments are about the failure of the management of the comprehensive plan update process. So this is project management, and this is not new. It's practiced by the military in the United States. It's practiced at Lockheed Martin. It's practiced at large businesses and small. And it starts with concept definition, where you set goals, outcomes, and results. And then you proceed to preliminary design, which includes cost, schedule, scope, and risk and mitigation for the ideas that you have. And these must be feasible even at that preliminary level. You proceed into defining those designs and detailed design, and then you go to implementation where you start to think about what parts you order, what you're going to build, and you create the documents for those, the detailed documents for those then. Now, the comprehensive plan in a city belongs at best here, and all you've done so far is vague vision statements. There is nothing about the city of the future. The city of the future, you've got to define for us what you think the conditions are in 10, 20, and 40 years, for example. The economy and the environment, population, water, climate, traffic for the city and the region, because we're part of a region, and it's going to grow too. So given that that isn't present in any aspect of this, in fact, the statement is the goal is to produce a comprehensive plan by October, and you know the only reason for that is because the elections for city council are in November that I can see. Because you sure don't accomplish a good comprehensive plan in that time. You haven't done these things that are required to produce a good comprehensive plan. So that's not a good reason, and you're not serving the city unless you stop this process now and get it on the right track. I have a lot more to say, and hopefully I'll come back and do that, but the assets of this is that you set outcomes and functions first on paper, and you walk through them on paper, and you iterate them a couple times, several times, and you figure out weaknesses. You figure out things that aren't going to work, you discard them, and you move on. It builds consensus, and I'm going to guarantee you that these 4 talks and the outreach, the sales talks, are not the way to build consensus. So you don't make a comprehensive plan that responds to the current market, because this is 40 years and 5 or 6 market cycles that you need to plan for, not the current market. So I have more to say, not time, but I'll bring more back when I do. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. We have nobody else signed up. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this time? Seeing no one, we'll close the public comment and move to consent. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Ordinance 11, first introduction of an ordinance amending the wastewater utility ordinance regarding the industrial pretreatment program. Ordinance 10, first introduction of an ordinance amending 14 of Title I, Land Development Impact Fees. Resolution 23, the resolution amending the 2019 annual fee resolution. Resolution 21 is a resolution adopting the Urban Drainage Flood Control District's Flood Hazard Area Delineation Report for Big Dry Creek downstream of County Line Road, which was dated February 2018. And ID 19-076 is approval of the March 5th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. So I need a motion and a second, please.
Mayor? I move to approve A through E.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we have some ordinances on second reading and public hearings. Ordinance 6 is a second introduction of an ordinance amending ordinance number 39, series 2018. This is known as the Annual Appropriations Bill. And I believe that Tiffany Hooten is here to present.
Good evening, Council. I do have a presentation that actually incorporates Ordinance 6, 7, and 8 into it, since all 3 of those ordinances are related to the 2019 budget. So I'll go ahead and go through that.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and let staff present for 6, 7, and 8, but we will hold public hearings separately for each. Okay.
All right. Good evening, Council. Tiffany Hooten, Finance Director for the City of Littleton. Before you, we have 3 ordinances, and as I mentioned, they are related to the 2019 budget. The ask before you this evening is, would you like to amend the 2019 annual appropriation for the carryover of 2018 encumbered funds? And this actually is going to be occurring for several funds. The majority of them are in the general fund, and then we have impact fee funds and open space funds and a couple of others that we'll kind of go through. The other two ordinances are directly related to the sewer fund and the storm drainage fund. And again, those are for carryover of 2018 encumbered funds. Every year, the city issues purchase orders and encumber funds for specific products, goods, or services. Some of those projects are not always completed in the year that we actually budget for them. They do lapse over the calendar year. And what this does is it leaves an open purchase order at the end of the year, and we would like to formally appropriate these on an annual basis so that they're formally incorporated into the 2019 budget. A number of projects. Oh,
Could I ask a question?
sure.
So there are some things that say 2017 in this.
It's
Not
possible.
17, 18, but
Yeah, so last year in 2017, there were a number of projects that we carried over as well. So there could be projects that are still open or funds are still available related to that project. We have a number of street projects that might
that's okay.
account
So
for.
I just wanted for clarification because
Sure.
somebody in the public might have that question too. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the largest ones that we always have open projects for are street rehab projects. We have a couple of specific ones this year. The armored vehicle that council amended the budget mid-year to allow for that. We've ordered it, but we haven't received it, and we haven't been able to pay for that yet. So that was carried over into 2019. We have some street pole replacements that we have an agreement with Xcel Energy that we're going to do half one year and half the other year. We budgeted a full year, so we're carrying those over. And then, of course, open space projects, you know, those have planning, they have development, then they have the actual construction, and then the payment. And so those tend to take a few years, upwards of 3 to 4 years for those projects as well. I think the largest one this year in the total is the biogas project. That was the $4 million that council approved during the budget process of 2018. And if you were able to look at the list, I believe there's about $2 million that has been paid towards that project. So that left $2 million that we needed to carry over. And again, this will reappropriate those funds in 2019. Here's just a quick list. As I mentioned, general fund is the largest. Capital projects fund is the other. That's the armored vehicle is the probably about a third of that. And then the sewer utility is $2 million is related to the biogas project. We did attach a list of individual projects, so if you have any specific questions on those, I'd be happy to address those at this time.
Council questions? Councilmember Valdez.
Just a couple questions. And maybe this was more for the city manager. So on page 2 of the list, about halfway down for the Fire Station 12 concrete repair work, are we still responsible for that?
Mayor Pro Tem, correct. This was one of the details that during the merger process that we had to kind of work through. And so at the end of the year, we did come to kind of a verbal agreement here about how to handle that. Since then, our city attorney had been working through a formal agreement, and we've kind of come to that conclusion. And now we would, in essence, pay our share of that cost, a maximum not to exceed.
Thank you.
Other questions, council? Seeing none, thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
So we will open the public hearing at 7:05. I have no one signed up to speak. Does anyone want to come down and speak to this? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing at 7:06. Council, any additional questions of staff or concerns? Ready to vote?
Motion.
to make a motion? No, we do need a motion. You guys are away.
I'll make a motion if you like.
Make a motion.
I move to approve the ordinance, amending ordinance number 39, series 2018, known as the annual appropriation bill on second reading.
Second.
Oh, got a second from Councilmember Schlechter. Ready to vote?
You can have the next one, Peggy.
Yeah.
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, ordinance 7 is the second introduction of an ordinance amending the 2019 Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise Budget. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing at 7:07. I have no one signed up to speak. Is anyone interested in speaking on this? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing at 7:07. And council, any questions now? Okay. Had a little time to think
Question
about
on,
it.
Only on concrete, is that still a?
Ready to vote?
Well,
Oh,
we need a
motion.
motion.
Somebody make a motion.
I'll do this one. I move to approve the ordinance amending the 2019 Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise Budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and now we can vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, ordinance 8 is ordinance on second introduction of an ordinance amending the 2019 Littleton Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise Budget. Any questions on staff's earlier presentation? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing at 7:08. There's no one signed to speak. Would anybody like to come down and speak on this? Seeing none, we will close public hearing again at 7:08, and I need a motion.
Good job.
I move to approve ordinance 08, 2019, second introduction of an ordinance amending the 2019 Littleton Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise Budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Cole. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Next is ordinance 5. This is the second introduction of an ordinance amending the Broadway County Line Commercial Center Planned Development, which is AutoNation Ford, entitled the Sixth Amendment to the Broadway/County Line Commercial Center PD. And I believe we do have a presentation.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Mike Sutherland. I'm the Deputy City Manager of the City of Littleton. Carl Onsager will be making the
You're
presentation.
the Deputy City Manager?
I was promoted. No, wait. No, I was not promoted. Excuse me. Deputy Community Development Director.
That's good. I think that would be news to Randy Young, our Deputy City Manager.
Yeah, Randy's nervous.
That's going to come back to bite me.
You have a new job tomorrow.
Randy, I'm sorry. I want to introduce Carl Onsager.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. I'm Carl Onsager, planner with Community Development, and I will be making the presentation tonight. So this process so far, staff has reviewed the application to amend the County Line Broadway PD. That was reviewed by Planning Commission with a recommendation to Council with conditions, which I will go into later into the presentation, and tonight is your decision on that second reading. The address for the property is at 8252 South Broadway. The property is just over 12 acres, zone PDC. That designation will not change tonight. Auto dealership is a permitted use. There are other amendments to the PD allowed for parking and display vehicle areas and establish setbacks for those. And tonight we are looking to add hail canopies as an allowed structure on that site. So the hail canopies, this is what's becoming a more industry standard across a number of different dealerships in the area. It's a response to extreme weather conditions and also the rising premiums that come subsequent to those. So the previous PD amendments established setbacks for parking. The hail canopies will meet those setbacks. In blue are the proposed areas for those hail canopies, and then the red are designated display vehicle areas. And one condition that the Planning Commission had was that hail canopies be removed on that first row along Broadway.
Is that shown on there?
It is, yes. It's that red area
Red.
just to the top.
Thank you.
So the site, the things that are proposed to change, the max area coverage would be 112,000 square feet, just over that. The gross floor area does not change in this, nor does the maximum building height. The max canopy height is 15 feet, and all other structure setbacks and parking setbacks remain the same. So the PD establishes some canopy design standards, includes not establishing those in the parking setbacks, not in the designated display vehicle areas, the max height of 15 feet, not counted against the gross floor area, a counterlevered design, so rather than the traditional four-post tent structure, no temporary signage or lighting attached to those, and additional landscape buffer requirements if it's adjacent to residential property. There is currently no residential property adjacent to that site, but if there ever were to be residential, that would come into play. And finally, the color and solar reflectivity controls as well. So a note also previously that this PD is only for the Broadway County line. Council considered a different PD amendment for AutoNation Ford to have an off-site parking area. This does not affect that area. So, and upon review of the criteria and analysis, we found that we recommend approval based on those, that it met those. And the three conditions from Planning Commission, one would be to prohibit the canopies along that first row of cars along Broadway, change the standard number 8 for addressing temporary attachments to those hail canopies, kind of clarifying temporary lights and things would not be allowed, and that any other lighting that's permanent on there would have to meet the photometric requirements, and the there would be no removal of existing trees, and that would be reviewed at the time of site development plan as well. And with that, staff recommends approval of ordinance 5-2019. I would entertain any questions you might have at this time.
One quick question. Is there anyone here from AutoNation Ford?
I believe there is, yes, and they have a presentation as well.
Okay. So we will take questions to staff at this point, and then we'll have the representative from AutoNation Ford come down. Staff, any questions? I mean, council, any questions of staff?
Yeah, and this might be for this gentleman here, but do we have any type of maintenance plan documented for 5-10 years down the road?
Absolutely. So one of those design standards that I did not mention, but is on that PD amendment, is that if there's ever any wear or tear visible, that these would be replaced. The industry also has an interest in maintaining the integrity of these, because if they don't, then they kind of lose their purpose.
Sure.
For protecting against hail. So, but my understanding, the lifespan's at about 10 years.
Okay.
So, but that also has, if they're ever damaged, then they'd have to be replaced.
Okay.
Councilmember Cole, did you have a question?
No, that's
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
Councilmember Elrod, do you have two questions?
No, I just have one.
Okay.
Jerry was right.
Can you, it's not going to be in the designated it's not going to be in the designated display vehicle areas. Can you show where those areas are?
Absolutely. Those would be the areas established in red. So in the third and fifth amendments to that PD established the bottom right and left areas as separate display vehicle areas. So the first row of those would not allow hail canopies.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. At one point, you indicated that if there were to be residential at some point, that there would need to be landscaping.
Correct. So that was a requirement that triggers a 20% opacity landscaping buffer. So
That's an automatic trigger. That's not something that's new to this.
This would be new in that, to add additional just for the hail canopies. So that is not an existing
Where would the
condition.
landscaping be?
Along any perimeter where the adjacent residential would be,
And the intention is?
to make it a prettier site and reduce any sort of kind of visual impact against that residential.
And Mayor, if I could jump in on there, on that, the proposal is only for the property you see in front of you. There is no residential that surrounds this property. The intent of that is if at any time the adjacent property was rezoned to residential, which is highly unlikely, there would be a buffer requirement between the hail canopies and an adjacent residential property to this boundary. That is very unlikely in our estimation.
Well, and it's interesting that we would put some sort of landscaping that would prevent the view of a 15-foot canopy. You mentioned color. What are the guidelines around color? The photo that you showed, they really blended into the building. Is that the idea about the color? What are the conditions of that?
So I believe the two colors are Pantone, so a brown or a gray.
Okay.
And again, that would be assessed also at the time of site development review to make sure that whatever is most appropriate for that site.
Okay. And then the 15-foot, that is actually at what point?
That is to the height of the structure.
At the point
The
of
very top of the peak, correct.
Okay, so then so it's 7.5 feet from the ground?
Roughly,
Where
I think it's about 5 feet.
Where the bar
for
would be?
It's about 10 feet up from the bar. The way it's angled from the edge, I think.
5 feet, that's 10 feet.
It says 7.5, or it says 7.4
To the bottom of the bar.
from the ground to the bottom of the bar. Is that right?
That is the detail that they were provided to us.
So then the canopy part would be over 6 feet tall.
From what I've seen, and I have some additional photos if you would care to see those, but I haven't gotten up to measure, but yeah.
Okay. Council, any additional questions? Okay. Would you like to come down, please? Thank you, staff.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. Thanks to staff for all the work that they've done on this. I represent AutoNation and VPS, the provider of the HailNet canopies. My name is Wade White, 1209 Meadow Ridge Court, South Lake, Texas. First of all, just before I get into this, on the heights that you were just talking about, the height that was depicted on the drawing is a minimum entry height from the ground to the lowest area of the structure. That would be at the minimum. So as the slope of the ground changed, the entry height might rise a little bit, but the top of the canopy is about 4 feet. So the width of the canopy. So at 7.4, you would really only be at about 11.5 or 12 feet, but as the slope ran, it would never exceed 15 or about a 10-foot clearance from the ground. If that happens, we do a step down and lower the structure so it's parallel with the horizon.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So I think the best place to start is just to look at some pictures always tell 1,000 words. These are some aerial photographs of some installations that we've done in nearby areas. This was the first of the installations in the Colorado market for AutoNation and Centennial. This is a good representation of what the tops of the canopies would look like from this altitude for this project that we're proposing. Here's just a more oblique surface level. You can see that we designed the canopies to accentuate the property, but not to be overwhelming, and really just to serve the function. The function was already mentioned by staff. Colorado right now is receiving the worst hail-related incidents of any place in the United States in the last 15 to 20 years. That includes like West Texas and Oklahoma City. And dealers are finding it increasingly difficult to find insurance for their open lot floor plan. Those that do are paying ridiculous premiums and deductibles for that coverage. So this is one of the methods that's been used for over 20 years in Texas and Oklahoma to help mitigate that problem and sort of settle the insurance market so costs don't rise exorbitantly. Just more pictures of Arapahoe projects. This is a Larry Miller location in Centennial. One of the things that we obviously make a point to do is we build these canopies to the local building code, and they'll go through the building code process here with the city if approved. And the snow load requirements in Denver obviously force us to engineer the canopies far more radically than we would do in Texas and Oklahoma. The way that's done is we have smaller spans between columns, and then obviously larger foundations and larger and thicker steel members. We've had canopies up now for about 2.5 years, 2 years in Centennial, so this will be the second winter that they've gone through, no problems whatsoever. The dealers actually are finding that since some of these dealerships have not experienced huge hailstorms since they've been up, they really appreciate the fact they don't have to clean off all the cars, so all the snow stays up on top. Again, this is in that same area in Centennial. This is Golden, Colorado. You can see in this one is a good example of the beige fabric. More snow pictures, and that's it.
Okay, council questions? Karina.
This is my second question of the evening.
Okay.
Just for the record. So I noticed that it's creating a lot of shade. What is the impact in the evening when the lights are on for display purposes and also for safety purposes? Are there any concerns with a decreased visibility because of the shade that's created?
Good question. So the membrane itself is HDPE. It does allow about 20 or 30% of the light to diffuse through the canopy. It will be slightly dimmer. AutoNation typically will come back with staff and do a photometric study once the canopies are up, and then in the areas that it might be too dim, request a permit to include lights under the canopy. And that'll all be done through the standard city process of making sure that there's no reflectivity on the roads. Every one of the projects that we've done here, which is about 11 now, have gone through this process, and all of them have also been approved afterwards, showing the photometric study in the areas that they did want to add lights. But it's not necessarily a safety issue. Many dealerships, depending on how well lit it is, it's sort of subjective, can still go out and almost read a VIN number, even with the phone, underneath the canopy. But yeah, I would imagine that some of them might get lit on request.
I've got a couple questions. Are these up all year?
Yes, ma'am, they're completely permanent.
And then you had mentioned that they'd been in Oklahoma and Texas?
Texas, yes.
So how do they withstand wind?
Just, they'll be built around the building code. So I think here it's 105 mile an hour, 3-second gusts, so it'll be engineered just like any other building.
Okay. And I also had the same question Karina did in regards to lighting and the Planning Commission. You may want to clarify on that. They had indicated that they did not want lighting. Was that kind of decorative lighting, or was it functional?
Thanks, Mayor. So I think it was added lighting. I don't think they had a problem with lighting under the structures, but attaching additional lights or temporary lights to those would not be allowed.
Like the strings of lights that they sometimes put up with.
Correct. Okay. Lights underneath, okay, but no temporary attachments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions, Council? Councilmember Cole.
Yeah, so we have sometimes some incredible sized hail here.
Yes, ma'am.
How mega sized hail can you handle?
I get that question all the time. Hail, like anything, is a function of size, also velocity, and the impact at which it hits, the direction in which it hits the canopy, whether or not it's a smooth stone or a jagged stone. I have seen hail penetrate and damage a vehicle a few times in the 20 years that I've been doing this. Oftentimes, one or two instances on several hundred independent tops. So I can't give you an exact answer to that question, only to say that it's happened very rarely, and all of those events were greater than baseball-size hail. We also get some pretty large hail out in West Texas and in Oklahoma. This is the approved product for hail mitigation for the most part in the automotive industry. So a variant of this product has been installed at General Motors, Volkswagen, Nissan, Honda, Toyota, and Hyundai plants all across North America and the southern part of the United States and Mexico, and predominantly because its efficacy at stopping hail. So we feel confident that even though there may be some outliers where you get some really bad stuff, it's going to do its job.
And the snow?
Yes, ma'am. It's engineered to handle all the snow. It has for 2 years now, including the storm that we just had last week here. No problems.
Last week wasn't anything, so.
What's that? Sorry?
Last week was kind of insignificant. So.
Well, for those of us in the news, it looked pretty bad. I was here the day before. I know the airport was flooded with people trying to get.
Yeah.
So, some of us have been here in much deeper stuff. So.
I'm sure.
No, so I just have to push at you, right?
No, no
So
problem.
Give you a chance to tell everybody these things.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, so it's engineered to handle the snow. It's got one of the design differences that we have here in Denver that differentiates these structures from otherwhere in the country. Obviously, the steel size, the footing size. We also do we call snow cables underneath the canopy. So as the membrane starts to collect snow, it doesn't focus in any one area too significantly to prevent sagging. But yes, ma'am, it's engineered to handle the building codes of Denver.
Thank you.
And Littleton.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:29. I have one person signed up to speak, Pam Chadbourne.
I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So I've got a couple of concerns about this, although I will say I had to buy a used car a couple of years ago. It was very difficult because a lot of cars had hail damage. So I like the concept of protecting cars from hail. That's great. My concerns come from a couple of things, though. One is these are made of plastic. And someday in the future, we're going to care a lot about stopping plastic pollution. It's killing life in the ocean. It's building up in the soil. It's not good for living things. And so it's made of plastic. And we're talking about covering acres with it. This is a concern for me, and I'd like to see some questions about what is going to replace this at some point in the future. My other concern is about lighting. So I happened to grow up on Broadway, and at the time, across from us was a little acre ranch. They had goats and chickens and turkeys, and they had eggs and milk, and that was cool. And then it got replaced by medical dental, which cities like, and then it got replaced by a car lot. Now, our city's lighting standards, for 10 years, we had great lighting standards. Councilmember Valdez, thank you for being on Planning Commission and putting that into effect. And castigation on those members of council who repealed it. Despicable. So we need better lighting standards. And there's no pictures here of what this looks like at night. Now, shielding of lights on car lots is essential. And we already have trouble with that along Broadway. It's not just for the people who live across the street, and there's still 29, 30 houses who live across the street from these car places. But it's also for drivers. And the issue here is that a person was killed by glare from, I believe, a gas station. And so there are potential liability issues with this. So we should care about lighting, both for the quality of life and for safety of drivers. And there's no pictures of that. We don't understand the impact of lighting, or I'll say I don't, because nothing is shown. So I would like to see more attention paid to this because these aren't the first. Everybody's going to want these, and we don't know what it looks like. So those are my two concerns. Thank you for hearing them.
Would anybody else like to come down and speak on this? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing at 7:31. Council, any additional questions for the staff or the applicant? Councilmember Elrod?
Can I ask you to just comment on what lighting standards they would have to uphold, if they need to change anything?
Absolutely. So they would have to comply with our photometric standards, which would require an engineered stamp on any of those plans. I did not include these photos in my staff presentation, but I do have some photos from field research out in Centennial from night to explore what these look like, the reflectivity and things like that, if you would like to see those.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Council, are you ready to vote? I need a motion.
I move to approve the ordinance.
I have a clarifying question on the motion. Because there's a condition from the, it's, okay, so it already is written.
Yep, okay. Okay, got it? Okay.
I still move to approve the ordinance amending the Broadway County Line Commercial Center Plan Development of AutoNation Ford, titled the Sixth Amendment to Broadway County Line Commercial Center PD on second reading.
Second.
I'll give it to Pat.
All right. Pat got it.
I guess I hear better out of this here. Okay, council, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Good job.
I would like to suggest to Mr. Sutherland he walk up these stairs to avoid the deputy city manager in that corner.
Okay. All right. We have reached the moment of, I can't get to my agenda. Here it is. Never mind. Comments and reports. Okay, we are at comments and reports. City manager.
No report, Mayor.
Okay. City attorney.
No report.
Councilmember Elrod.
As many of you are aware, Keith did share with us last week, there are actually 3 meetings this week around DRCOG, the transportation forums, et cetera. So Douglas County is tomorrow, where we will have our projects presented, and Arapahoe County is on Friday. And then we have a general meeting with DRCOG executive board member meeting Wednesday night. So a lot happening on that front this week. Thank you for fellow council members that are filling in for some of that, and staff.
Okay. Councilmember Fay. Continuing on the topic of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, otherwise known as DRCOG, I applied for and got accepted. I think I'm happy about this, to the Citizen Academy of DRCOG, and it's 7 weeks. It was the one evening I had free, so now I don't have any free. 20 hours of training, 21 hours, so I'll start to know something about this stuff maybe. And then on the Highline Canal, I was curious about where Littleton was on participating with the Conservancy, so I asked Mr. Reister for an update on that. And he said that Littleton has committed $20,000 a year to support the project for the last 2 years, and will continue through 2020. And the most important thing that does for Littleton, well, besides the park and the trees, and well, not a park, but the recreational area and the trees, is that it gives a place to put stormwater, and it saves the city needing to either provide the infrastructure or maintain the infrastructure that up until this change, we had to find a way to get the water either around the canal, I'm talking about the stormwater, or under it. And because the stormwater could not be mixed with irrigation water. And that had to do mostly with, I believe, the amount of debris that can be in stormwater. So there will be structures and various kinds of mitigation to clean up the stormwater before it goes into the canal. And then the canal will become a conveyance to move the water to the river eventually. And that's all. Councilmember Schlechter.
I would like to say that the mayor and I were in the National League of Cities last week, was it? I don't remember. It was the
Storm week.
Storm Week. It took me 13 hours from door to door to get back that Wednesday, so that was fun.
Everything.
NLC is the National Advocacy Group for Cities, Towns, and Villages. They kept saying that over and over. But the focus of the overall conference and the general sessions was on infrastructure, trying to get the federal government to pass an infrastructure bill to help fund our cities, towns, and villages to build some more infrastructure. I attended some individual meetings, seminars on the census, on priority-based budgeting, civil discourse, met with the congressional delegation, and also attended a meet and greet with the youth delegates. I was impressed how many cities actually brought their youth delegates to the program, and they met and they had some good meetings. It was great to see them and see what they're doing. Overall it was a good conference. Hopefully next year we can get some more involvement with Littleton City Council. Quite a few cities brought their entire councils or 5 or 6 together, so it was good. And one other update is, if everyone doesn't realize, today is the last full day of winter. Tomorrow we start spring, so that'll be exciting.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Cole.
No comments.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, I had the pleasure today of traveling with our executive director for Meals on Wheels, Diane, and we had a great day of half a day of delivering meals. Really a neat program for those not knowledgeable about it. I recommend reading the Littleton Independent. It made the front cover of this past week. And also had the pleasure of joining Denise Stevens and some of the other people from the executive team to go tour Rocky Mountain Water. If you're in Littleton, I'd recommend Rocky Mountain Water. They do a nice job over there. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Valdez.
Yes, I had the honor of representing the city of Littleton at the Littleton Elks annual award dinner, where they recognized Troy and Heather Greenwood, the owners of the Graceful Cafe, as the Littleton Citizens of the Year. That was quite an honor for those folks over there. Also, the Elks recognized Corporal Martine, Officer Pike, and Officer Bo Rigo for their courageous actions at the Windermere apartment fire. So that was awesome. Chief Stevens was there as well. The Elks also gave scholarships to 7 students, Littleton students. The scholarships totaled just right around $18,000. So that's the kind of stuff that our nonprofits do in the city of Littleton.
Thank you. And I appreciate you standing in, as I was
Absolutely.
in D.C. for that, and I think it's a good representation of the teamwork on council, that where one can't go, with another one pitches in. So lots going on, obviously, lots of meetings. Your nights are full now, Carol, darn. A couple things, and Carol, we can talk offline. It was Hillary from the Highline Canal Conservancy reached out, and she wants to have a meeting, so I'm going to invite you to also participate in that if you have time. I think it's just to kind of see what Littleton's doing and get us looped in a little bit, or I think she just needs some FaceTime maybe. As Kyle indicated, the National League of Cities, its focus is largely on legislative action and things that are of impact to cities, towns, and villages. And one of the big issues that was being dealt with was transportation, and a couple of cities sent pretty large contingencies, which fortunately helped represent the region also. So I know Centennial was in there fighting hard, and I know Arvada was also, and so was Lakewood. And so all of those mayors are part of the transportation committee that is part of the Metro Mayors Group. And I'm also on that committee, and we had a meeting this week with representatives from the Denver Regional Council of Governments. We also included some county commissioners. And the effort, I think I had mentioned to you, the council at one point, that the Metro Mayors was looking at a way to create a regional transportation authority. What probably won't be called that or structured exactly like that, but it would, it's in response to the failed 110 at the ballot regarding sales tax increase for transportation issues, recognizing that we all know that there are problems that have to be paid for, and there is only one place that we're going to get the money, and that is through some sort of tax increase. And so recognizing also that local efforts and regional efforts tend to be more successful because there's a higher level of trust and there's a higher level of accountability. This effort is going forward. So that this group moved forward the request to take this and run it past some of our legislators to try to get the legislature to create a bill that then we can support for probably a 2020 ballot issue, which would include a year of pretty extreme outreach and communication, similar to what Urban Drainage Flood Control District did to help explain what this would mean. So we're just in the beginning stages, but we're kind of on the fast track. So Denver, Dr. Cog will be hearing this again tomorrow night, and we'll be making a decision about their support going forward. So at this point, there seems to be some good support for it. So it's very important for us that we keep this trajectory moving ahead with this. And then there will be at some point some asks coming to the city about how we can continue to support it. The other thing about NLC, and I agree with Kyle in terms of getting, having some preparation for next year in terms of what issues that are being dealt with at the federal level. So we are dealing right now with issues with the FCC, the EPA, the FAA, and the FTA. What's the transportation? Federal Transportation Board. What? Authority.
Maybe not the FTA, but probably everything else.
Everything else. Well, we want money from the FTA.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
Well, she just started the problem with them, so.
I did. Now we have a problem. And so these are all, well, you know, what happens in Washington, at some point it does and will have an effect here. Obviously, our interim city attorney, Mr. Feldman, has been very active working on trying to control the out-of-control FCC. And these are all things that have massive impact. And because we are a home rule municipality, a lot of these things are massive unfunded mandates, as we've recognized with the EPA coming down on our sewer treatment facility. So it's very important that we stay very engaged in this, and that if in fact we end up at a place next year where a lot of these things are issues, then I think that putting together a contingent from the city and then combining it with some of the others in the region and going out there and spending a couple extra days and getting some appointments to meet these folks in their offices is definitely the way to go.
Mayor, I wasn't going to bring this up before, but since you mentioned the FCC, just to give you an example, and I'm going to miss the April 2nd meeting because I've got meetings at the FCC with a number of Colorado local governments on the 1st and 2nd. There's a proposed rule that would change 35 years of how the Cable Act, federal law, has been interpreted. You know that we receive a franchise fee from cable companies, and it's 5% of gross revenues. And the law says you can't receive more than 5% of gross revenues, and that everyone has been living under that since 1984. There's a new push by the cable industry, and the FCC has proposed rules that would say that this includes all kinds of in-kind contributions as well as cash payments, including the value of PEG channels. So we have Channel 8 now, and this city does more than most other cities in Colorado, certainly more than most of its size, not just in broadcasting council meetings, but in the widest possible variety of boards and commissions, and making this government as transparent as you possibly can. If this FCC rule were to be adopted, a cable company could say the value of the bandwidth that we give you for Channel 8 is worth X. And if you want to keep Channel 8, we're going to deduct that value from the franchise fees that you get. Now, the franchise fees are a significant contribution. They go into the general fund. They're rent from a private company for the use of public property. And I am afraid that at some point, I'm going to have to come before you and a whole lot of other municipal clients and say, would you rather see your franchise fees go down somewhere between 60 to 100% and lose all that general fund money? Or do you want to give up your Channel 8? Think about how that would impact this community. That is one of the things that the industry is trying to get the FCC to do. The law has not been interpreted that way since it was adopted in 1984, and there will be a lawsuit if that rule is passed, but we're going to be there on April 1st and 2nd advocating at the FCC to please not do that. So those are the kind of things that we're up against.
Thank you, Ken. And then I just wanted to kind of close with that we did, there were some comments this evening regarding the breakfast that we had with the Lift Board. And I think that it's important for the community to understand that while we don't have the same sort of governance over the Lift Board as we do our other boards, we do appoint the board, and we can remove people from the board, and we can basically eliminate the board, hence eliminating Lift. And I think it's very important that this council continues its diligence over the Lift Board in terms of the financial and fiduciary responsibility. We have a loan out to them, and there are requirements for repaying that. There are also requirements regarding some of the tax increment that's being collected. At this point, the Lift Board owes more money than it can pay, and so I think we do have a responsibility back to the citizens. It is public monies, and I appreciate council's thoughtfulness in their conversations with the board, and I appreciate the board's thoughtfulness in their conversations back to us on some ways that we can continue to work together that may be more productive. So I actually enjoyed the meeting, and I look forward to meeting with them again in 6 months, which we have scheduled. So
I thought it was a good meeting.
I did too.
Yeah,
I didn't enjoy the breakfast, though. That we've got to do different breakfast. Mayor Pro Tem Valdez.
We had a presentation a while back from the FAA concerning the FAA. Can we get an update at some point on that legislation that was going through?
I can give you an update.
Okay, cool.
That is on the Metroplex, where the airplanes would be rerouted and start flying over Littleton.
Right.
There is no update.
There isn't.
The FAA continues to share no information, give no information. I met with Senator Gardner's local rep and his Washington rep, with mayors and or representatives from Centennial, Greenwood Village, and Cherry Hills Village, and they've got a very clear view of what our issues are. I've talked to Senator Bennett's people and continue to talk to Representative Crow's people. We are expecting some information from the FAA in terms of their plans for outreach and public meetings, but as of now, we haven't received anything, so.
That's the update.
That's the update.
Okay.
We will stay on top of that. So if there's nothing else, we'll be adjourned.
Thank you.